Welcome back. I know some of you have been wondering where I've been for the last week or so. Everything's been fine. The best thing was that the sun finally came out, I think maybe the first or second time this entire summer. This summer has been so wet and soggy, everything turned mildew. But when the sun came out for a week, I had some chores waiting on me that have been, just hanging up, and I had to get them done. So it's taken me away from this, my enterprise here with my channel. But in the meantime, just, right on schedule, the rain is back now. So it brings me back downstairs here, and I can go back to talking about this Frankford Arsenal X-10 progressive reloading press. And if you've watched the last few episodes, we've showed you how it unboxed and put together. The last episode, we put in all, well, not all the dies, but we adjusted most of the dies, all except for the Lee factory crimp die. And we haven't installed powder, and we haven't installed primers. That's what we're going to do tonight. And we're going to see if we can load through a bunch of cases. I've got here 308 Winchester cases. I've got just a little less than 100, which works out perfectly because this collator is designed for no more than 2.5 pounds of cases. Now, here's a bit of trivia for anybody who's starting out loading. This is a number that you all should remember. There's 7,000 grains to a pound of powder. All right, so 7,000 grains to a pound, whether it's powder or brass or whatever it is. So, if I take one of these cases and I check out the weight, I get about 186 grains, and I can tell you that those are all IMI Israeli military cases. They're all within about 2.5 grains, top to bottom. So that being the case, if we whip out our computer here and do a little bit of quick math, we got 7,000 times 2.5 pounds capacity, 2.5 equals, so we have a 17,500 grain capacity divided by 186, and that comes out to 94 cases. Can't be any better than that. I got just about almost exact. I think what I have is 94 cases. So it just happens to be that way. So anyway, if you ran 3 or 4 cases of that size, 308 cases over, it's not going to upset the apple cart. But that's the number you want to stick with. So obviously, if you've got 9mm cases or 38 special cases or something like even 45 cases, you got a lot of brass you can put in that at one time. But I don't plan on doing any massive amount of loading. I just want to load up these Nosler custom competition bullets. These are great bullets. They're basically, I think they're patterned pretty much after the Sierra 168 grain match bullet, and I'm choosing to use Hodgdon Varget powder, and we'll set that powder dispenser up. That's going to be very important. And I'm using some CCI large rifle military primers. I happen to be able to get these at one time back when I purchased my M1A, and they have a little bit denser primer cup. I guess it's no big deal because 308 military cases, 7.62 military cases actually have lower pressure than 308 commercial cases. So you can use standard 308 commercial cases with a 7.62. But I'm going to be loading up some fairly low pressure loads. What I want to do first of all is charge up my powder hopper, and let's bring you over and show you exactly how that's accomplished. Now, I've demonstrated this technique, this little trick, in the past. It really simplifies the process of nailing down the particular charge that you want to use. First thing you want to do is open up the thimble, open up the drum all the way, because you don't know how much, I don't know how many grains that particular drum holds. I'll check it out someday. I suspect that it probably holds at least 30-06 capacity. 30-06 capacity is around 60 grains or so. So I would suspect that it holds that much. Now, what I want to do is, first of all, measure out one charge. I don't want to put any powder in it. I just want to measure out one charge. So I've got a weighed charge of my powder, and that's exactly one charge, exactly what I want. I want to give that a wrap or two, make sure that all that powder is settled down at the bottom and no powder is clung to the sides. Now at this time you want to take an empty case with a dead primer in it, and you want to position it in the station just before the powder drop. Now this powder dispenser is case actuated, so I'm going to advance it through 2 stations. You notice that doesn't come up, so you never have to worry about having a dump on basically a vacated station. So you never have to worry about that because there's a shaft that is incorporated in this. Now, as I come up, don't go all the way. I want to make sure that I have all that powder in there, and I can just verify. I'm not going all the way back, so I'm not double cycling. So now I'm going to check down inside and make sure that I have all the powder down in there. I'm going to say that I do. And now, while it's in the horizontal position, turn this thimble in until you can feel that engage the powder. What you're doing is you're basically trapping the powder behind the back of this powder measure. There we go. I hit it right there. Now, if you want, you can take note of what the vernier scale says on there. And I'm going to do that. Okay. So, it's at 210. See, at 210, I'm getting... it's not coming up quite on 210. It's 210 minus 3. That's not 3 grains. These are just references on the vernier dial. That's all. So you want to have basically I can mark that down. So it's 3 less than 210, which 207. So now that I've got that established, I can drop that all the way into the case and raise it up. Now I can charge my entire powder measure. Remember, I've still got a case down there that's and you can put in a pound. It's good to load it up with a full pound. And as I told you in this my last video, I've elected not to use the damper at the bottom. I've found in my personal experience that it doesn't make a hoot of difference. I've done some serious measuring with and without the dampers, and I couldn't find a difference even when it gets down very low. Powder does not compress that easily. You know, anybody who's been loading long enough knows that you really have to force a bullet down onto powder to compress it. So anyway, I've got the powder charged, and this cap is very tight, but I'm going to put it on just loosely because what I want to do now is take that case out, and I want to run that case through again and repeatedly and see just how closely it comes. So one more time. Dead station, charge, and we'll measure that. This is a fairly coarse powder. Let's see, I tear my scale out here. Well, I've come within 2/10 of my. Actually, no, it just settled. I came within 1/10 of my assigned charge. Let's try that again. That was very, very close. this is a fabulous little trick to save you a lot of time. I'm going to open up that dial just another one number on it. That's all I'm going to do. So I'll give it another try. I mean, this dispenser is actually coming out with repeated accuracy each time. And this is a very coarse powder. What I get is an extruded powder made by Hodgdon. It's one of the the extreme powders that's temperature insensitive. That's pretty neat. That's pretty close to what I want all the time. So there we go. We've got our powder measure all set up. Now the next job is to fill the primer magazine. And you'll notice that it's got a clevis pin at one end, and at the other end it's got a plastic snout, and that's your pickup device. So you leave the clevis pin in, and I got this new AA Alpha Academy primer tray. I'm trying it for the first time. It looks like a good system. First of all, my other one was so old, it was decrepit, and plus this one here is square, so it fits square boxes much nicer. Now, if you've never used a primer flipper, take the textured side of it and just turn the primers onto that. You may or may not have them all just oriented perfectly from the beginning, but if they're not, just give them a short, quick swirl, and they'll right themselves. Look very carefully, make sure that you don't have any upside down. Just take an extra second to be sure of that. Put your cover back on, and then invert the box. I like to get them somewhat in the middle of the tray. Again, make sure that you have them all oriented correctly, and then just go about picking them up. And you should always have safety glasses on when you're doing this. It's you know, primers are extremely explosive. So this is the first time I've picked up primers with this particular primer pickup tube, and it's a little stiffer than the one I'm used to. I've used others before, but it feels like. Now, I told you that I was going to report on this, what my feelings are as I go along, and so far I really have been impressed by everything. The powder dispenser so far, I haven't run it through its course yet, but that's set up really nicely. But this primer pickup magazine is more clumsy than anything I've experienced before. You'll notice it's got kind of broad plastic here, and so it doesn't have pinpoint aim. The ones I've used in the past had brass or bronze pickup fingers, really, and you could really jam them on there and just pick them up in a hurry. This one here is a little bit more fussy, and you've got to get the primers isolated before they pick up, and it's, you know, it's easy to flip one over if you're not careful. So not a biggie, but I would say that could be a redesign element if they want to make things a little bit more user-friendly. That's just a little bit too clumsy for me, so not a big deal, but we'll keep on going and pick them up. But I would say that I'm probably picking them up at about 1/3 the pace that I would have used on some of the older tubes that I've had in the past, such as the earlier Star Universal Progressive Press. That had a very fast pickup tube. So now we just take the clevis pin end and make sure it's seated, positioned properly so you don't spill primers all over the floor, and just release the clevis pin, and that drops them all in. It's important to put your primer follower back in, and don't bang it, just let it sit there. Now this has got a rare earth magnet at the top, and when it approaches this sensor, then it'll set off the alarm to let you know that you're down to your last 5 or 6 primers. I like that. Now, for any bottleneck cases or for cartridges that you don't have carbide dyes, lubrication is absolutely essential. There's no way you can possibly size cases without lubricant, because you're going to simply stick a case. If it doesn't stick the first one or two, it'll definitely stick on the third or fourth, and then you have some issues to do. And I've got a video on how to unstick, how to get a case out of a die, but it's not something you want to repeat. So my favorite lubricant, as I've said before, is this Lee sizing lubricant. This is an industrial lubricant that's it's usually sold for factories, you know, in big 55-gallon drums or 5-gallon drums or whatever, but 5-gallon canisters. But this stuff here, you know, it's very, very efficient. It's for metal forming, and that's exactly what we're doing. So how much do you use? Very, very little. I'll show you how much I'm going to use at first. For all those cases, that's it right there, like I'm getting ready to brush my teeth. I'm going to put that, smear it on the bottom. You don't want to have big clumps of it because it'll get inside of a case mouth. So just smear it on the bottom or on the sides. Nothing, you don't have to be too fancy about it. Throw in your cases. And this is a progressive thing. You put in the amount of lubrication necessary until they're a haze. You want to have a nice haze on them. So I'm going to put the cover on and make a little bit of noise here. We'll check them out. Now, this is lubricating even the necks, but that's all right, because although that will cause hydraulic dents if you're loading cases that are with wet lubricant, this lubricant will dry, and so it will prevent that issue. I've been using this stuff consistently now for at least 15 years, and I've never once had a hydraulic dent. I've never had a case stuck with this lubricant. It's got a lot of, each one of these cases, you can feel it. This has got a lot of lubricant on there. It doesn't take much. That's a very, very effective stuff to have. And like I say, even though it's up on the neck where you normally should never apply lubricant, neck or shoulder, once it dries, it can't do anything hydraulically. So it's perfectly safe for that. And we're going to deposit those cases right into the collator here. Hand loading cardinal rule number 1: keep the canister of your powder on the bench with no other canisters, because when you run out of things to do and you still got powder left, you don't want to have questions about which canister they came from. So always be sure to keep that canister on the bench. So I'll take advantage of my handy bullet hopper here. I like that, and that's in a nice position too. Now all we need to do is start the motor for the collator. And if it does as it was originally programmed, it'll start dropping, look at that, just like clockwork. And you're orienting perfectly. And it shuts off automatically once it fills the tube up. I like that. So I feel a little bit stalled out here. I'm waiting for something else to do, but I guess all I have to do is pull the handle. So down one, that fed into the first station, and I could feel that was bumping out a military primer. This is mixed, and the case collator came on just in time to turn that around. Now I'm sizing, and that's also doing a two-stage decapping process. Now we're doing a swaging of that military primer. I could feel that effort is very low. Even though I can feel that crunching, I want to make sure that I've got primers feeding here. So that first one didn't. The primers hadn't cycled around yet, so I'm going to keep on going. Make sure you watch for that. Make sure that you have... Let's see yet if I have primers cycling around. I do. This is now going to be dropping powder. Now, this is a dead station, currently unoccupied, so we're going to bypass that one. And now we're seating a bullet. Another bullet. We're liable to hear this one. And one other thing, we've got to now drop this down, drop down my factory crimp die. And I think I've got enough length, I hope. If not, I'll have to invert the ring. Actually, it's not important for me to do a factory crimp die. I'm probably not going to bother. Now, I think we're cooking with gas now. This is awful fun. I like it. I'm trying to see if there are any bad issues, and I don't yet. Once I get these military cases processed, then I can move along a lot quicker. And certainly if I were doing non-military cases, it would glide along. That process of driving out a military primer is always very forceful. But as far as the effort involved in loading with all those stations all at once, very easy. As you can see, I mean, everything is working like clockwork. This station here, I've heard people say that the powder measure leaks powder. There's no leaking of powder in this powder measure. There's no place that it can leak out. There's absolutely no leakage possible. What I believe people are observing is powder on the top of their ram and on top of the head, and that's perhaps caused by powder dancing out of this vacated station right here. There's perhaps a way to avoid that issue by maybe covering that hole. But I think that as long as you're conscious of the fact that when you're decapping military primers, that you've got to make sure that you maintain a smooth operation so that the powder is not being forced to bobble around. I like it. I really do. You know, as I say, I'm not getting any benefit from this series from the company. I don't represent them in any way. I'm just telling it like it is. I believe that, you know, one of my first little fastidious complaints is not a big one, but maybe an improved pickup device that's not so clunky. It's just big. You know, the plastic is big. Now, I don't know whether there's a safety issue involved, but the ones I had before were these thin brass fingers, and I could just pop, 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 and it picked them up very nicely. This one here is a little bit more fussy, so that's a small thing. The other thing is that you've got to be very sure, as the cases are feeding, that you don't get hung up with a jagged case. You know, some of these cases have been fired 2 or 3 times, and the rims are a little bit ragged. And those ragged cases, that's not a fault of the machine. That's strictly that's the way it is. When you have a ragged case rim, it can get hung up on a feed plate. And the feed plate has got to be machined precisely, and that's exactly what that one is. It's a number two. It's a number two shell plate, so that's not an issue at all. That's not the fault of the machine. You just have to be conscious of it, and as soon as you feel that sensation that there's some resistance, take a look, and you'll probably see a case that's tilted, and the bottom of the case just needs to be eased into that rim, and just relax the pressure on your handle. Don't ever pull on the handle to force it through a particular situation, because there's so much leverage here. You can damage things, so you don't want to do that. This machine is, as far as I can see, really nicely made. The powder dispenser is operating just as slick as can be. Everything about it. The primer feed mechanism is working nicely. Everything is good. So thanks to my Patreon donors that made this possible. I bought the primers, bought the bullets, bought the powder, and bought the machine. This is my Patreon donors bring this to you. So thank you to them, and certainly if you wish to help me out with these endeavors, feel free to do so. I really appreciate it, and I'm not going to take it for granted. So Benny's upstairs right now. He's having his dinner, and I'm going to go up and have a cigar with him and take it easy for the afternoon. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that thumbs up button right now, and the bell. God bless.